This is War Room Moments, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and most relevant people on the planet, hear their stories, and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. War Room Moments is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board. Here's your host, Jason Miller.
Hey, welcome to this episode of War Room Moments. My name is Jason Miller. I am your podcast host today. And today I have a great guest, the CEO of CupRoyale. And I'm telling you what, this is going to be interesting conversation today because this is a first for me to hear this kind of business model. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, just take a couple of 30 seconds or so and introduce yourself to the audience.
I'm Ralph Brown. I currently hold 4 world records in extreme powerboating. And so I'm the guy that's putting together the first annual powerboat race all the way around the world. So I'm excited about it.
That's pretty amazing. Really, really amazing. Well, you know, first and foremost, before we get into like really discussing CupRoyale, do you come from a family of entrepreneurs?
Not really. No. Now, my dad was probably 30 years ahead of his time. When I was a kid, I lived in Grand Turk, Turks and Caicos. My dad was in the Air Force, and he was the commanding officer of the Air Force detachment in Grand Turk. I found out later the detachment was one person, my dad. But then the Navy has a landing strip down there and a dock. And so every once in a while, the Air Force needed to land an aircraft on Grand Turk, Turks and Caicos. And they found out that the Navy wasn't going to run and help out the Air Force too much. So they decided they wanted a permanent officer down there to have a good relationship with the Navy. Maybe they could get some help from the Navy if they ever needed one. So my dad had that job. And so he bought a bunch of land down there. The land, I believe, is now Sandals, but he spent forever trying to find the funding to open his own hotel. And nobody thought that, Turks and Caicos, Grand Turk would ever be a good tourist resort. And my dad was, this is 30, 40 years ago. And anyways, but that's it. Really, we're not so much family of entrepreneurs. Just
right. Right. Well, it's interesting. How did you get in this space of creating CupRoyale, and what led you here?
Well, I'm actually a school teacher with a math and science background, taught physics and other high school science courses. And then I left that to go into the financial services industry, and I learned how money works. And so much from it. But after that, I hit a rock in a boat and I broke the motor. And I just got pissed off. We can put a man on the moon. We can't make a boat that would go over the rocks, and run in really shallow water and still be seaworthy. So over a period of a couple of years, it became a stewing point for me. And my wife was in a bad car wreck, and she was disabled and bedridden for a long time. And so I found a place to hide from my problems and how to make a better boat. Never thought I would do anything with it. And one day, my wife cornered me and said, either do it or shut up. You're driving everybody in the family nuts. And that's the short version. It's a lot longer explanation than that. She thought I was going to shut up. She went to bed. I walked and prayed till about 2:00 in the morning, got on the internet and formed a company. Okay. Woke up the next morning, told her I did that. She was not a happy camper. But within 2 weeks, she completely circled around and said, man, you should do this. You should really do this. And so I raised a couple $1 million, developed a boat that could run in this much water, literally, and was seaworthy enough to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Now, it didn't happen the first time. I actually had 15 failures, 15 boats that I built that I couldn't get to do what I wanted to. So I would completely rip them apart and rebuild them again. The 16th time I got what I wanted. And then there's probably another 30, 40 modifications that I went through in that process that I don't count as a major rebuild. And so I really was wrong a lot. I was wrong a lot more than I was right. But in that process of being wrong so many times and only right once, okay, I learned what the whole process was. And I learned not just what everybody else was doing, but what was better. And when the vice president of the largest boat company in the world showed up at my office and wanted me to show him everything I was doing, of course, I would not show him everything I was doing, but that said something to me that they really want to know about. Later on, I was stupid enough to show people. And I learned that lesson by the School of Hard Knocks. There are people out here that are not as honest as you'd like them to be. But anyways, that's just the way it is. But anyway, so I got excited about this. And in that process, I found out a way to get a larger boat to use less fuel. Now, most of us have no idea how bad the fuel economy of boats are. But if you get in your car, assuming you have a gasoline operated car, not an electric car, but a gasoline operated car, internal combustion engine, and you're going down the highway at 60, 65 miles an hour, you're probably going to get 20 to 35 miles to the gallon, somewhere in that area. Unless you got a big truck and you get a little bit less, But anyways, somewhere in that area, 25 to 35 miles to the gallon. You take a boat that can run the same distance, that's carrying the fuel that can go the same distance, and make it go 60 miles an hour. You're lucky to get 2 miles to the gallon. In fact, the vast majority don't even get 1 mile to the gallon. So if you look at a ship, the big ships use 400 gallons to go 1 mile. And so, it's just the big ones. Most of them is a lot less than that, but the real big ones. So I discovered a method to make a boat to operate on a lot less fuel. And I got to just in the middle of, like you stumbled into it. I didn't come up with it. Well, I did come up with it, but it wasn't looking for that when I came up with it. And so I started researching around. I heard about this guy, Pete, what is Pete's last name? I can't think on top of my head, but he had he's Pete, Pete, it doesn't matter, but he did Earth Race. And they went after the fastest boat to go around the world. And they failed the first time to break the record, which was 75 days. And then they tried a second time, and they ended up getting it down to 61 days for the fastest power boat to go around the world. And I got thinking, well, shoot, I'll just break that record when I'm ready to produce this bigger boat that can operate on a lot less fuel. It's an easy record to break. It's hard to pull the money together to build it, but the easy record, as far as what I'm looking at, a very easy record to break. And the more I looked at this, the more obvious it became to me that it isn't easy. I did a lot of research. And so, and the more I researched it, the more I realized that we should make this a race. Not just one boat going around the world to break the record, but a race that we run every single year, all the way around the planet. But if it's nonstop racing around the planet, that would get boring. People wouldn't want to watch that. But if you broke it into 20 different legs, like the Tour de France is, you have all these different legs. And then when you got to each location, you had a race, a local race in that harbor or along the shoreline. And the more I studied this, I realized that the crowds that show up for boat racing are humongous. If you go to look at the largest stadiums ever built, 100% of the largest stadiums ever built, they're not built for soccer. They're not built for football. They're not built for golf. They're not built for tennis. They're built for racing, 100%. If you look at the largest NFL stadium, 88,500 people, that's the Meadowlands just outside of New York. And 88,000, it's not always full, 88,500 people, New York City. Go to Indianapolis 500, 257,000 people, 3 times as big. And then when they have overflow crowds in there, over 300,000 people. Okay, it's a lot bigger. But 100% of the largest stadiums, the largest television audience in the world. Okay, and here in the United States, we watch football. Oh, we love football. About 40 million Americans watch it. They watch 2 or 3 games a week. That's a lot of people. And that's why they pay the NFL $8.2 billion a year for their television and media rights because 40 million people watch it 2 or 3 times a week. 400 million watch Formula One. Let me say that again. 400 million watch Formula One. The world loves racing. We Americans think we're 4% of the world's population. So we think if it's not going on here, it's just not important. Hello? Okay.
Yeah, there's a ton of value in, I mean, I used to be a big NASCAR fan back in the day. I was a huge NASCAR fan, followed NASCAR, loved NASCAR. And it's a huge audience that follows it, right? And you get into the world of like sailing and things of that nature, right? I mean, I know people that follow that really closely.
Oh, absolutely.
But I want to back up for a minute, because what happened with the first boats you created? What happened with that? The flat bottom boats that
you mean you're talking about crossing the I set the world record for the smallest power boat to ever cross the Atlantic Ocean in the history of mankind.
Wow.
A lot of people, you can't make a boat that can run in this much water that's still safe on the high seas. It just goes in the face of all naval architecture there is. And it doesn't work. You can't. A lot of people told me it couldn't be done. So we did all of our calculations and figured it out. And, I took one from Tampa, Florida to Germany, 8,312 miles. Now I drugged my older brother with me. My mom wasn't too happy. She's thinking I'm going to lose one. That's okay. Ralph, he's expendable. But Ralph and Bob, you can't lose both of them. I got my brother Bob to go with me. He's really a great teammate in these kind of things.
Are these boats on the market now?
I've sold about 50 of them. The U.S. Army's bought a couple of them. National Park Service has bought a couple of them for Rangers. The Fish and Wildlife Service has bought a couple of them for Rangers. NOAA has bought one. A couple of other countries have bought them. And I guess I've sold about maybe 25 to fishermen, local fishermen, mostly professional fishermen. I got a guy called me this morning, just an hour ago or so. He has one of my older ones. He said, man, my neighbor wants one just like it. He wants me to sell my boat. So no way, I'll sell my kid, but I'm not selling my boat. Best boat I ever had. But anyways, so they're not really commercially available at this point in time. We didn't raise enough money to really go into manufacturing. So we built about 50 one-offs, and we will be going into manufacturing on the backside of the CupRoyale. It's all kind of patched together in the whole package. But if you look at all the boat manufacturers in the world, there's about 5,000 or 6,000 of them. There's only 2 or 3 that are worth over $1 billion. But if you go look at all the international sports like this, 100% are worth more than $1 billion. So you kind of think, what's the likelihood of succeeding, in the goal? Now, my goal, which sounds outrageous to most people, because they haven't done the research, they haven't looked at all the numbers and stuff. But if you look at all the numbers, once we get this off the ground, it should be worth 30, 40 billion. Realistically, it probably won't. It's probably worth only about 3 billion, after we get it fully operational. But fully operational, just from franchise sales alone, we should turn the revenues that would justify a 20 to 1 price to earnings ratio, which should justify a market cap of in excess of 3 billion. And so just looking at that, that's kind of interesting. So anyway,
it's pretty fascinating just listening to you talk. I can just feel the passion coming out of you, and that's a really good thing for sure. But what I'm really curious to hear from you is, what have been some of your major struggles that you've had trying to spin this thing up?
Oh, by far the biggest struggle is raising capital. And the real issue about that is having people believe,
Right.
When I said I'm going to make a boat that can run in this much water and was seaworthy, people laughed at me. Okay. Starting with my wife.
Well, I've had that happen before too. So.
Okay. She's but they don't laugh anymore so much about it, because I mean, she's been on the boat just running across super shallow water, and there's no question about it. I took it to Germany. I took it through the remnants of 2 hurricanes and a tropical storm.
Oh wow!
And so, and Her Majesty's Search and Rescue came out and filmed us in waves, I don't know, maybe 17, 20 foot, okay, in that area. Just big old waves. And so we were fine. They left us 40 miles out in the middle of the ocean. Okay, we were between the Shetland Islands and the Orkney Islands, about 40, 50 miles northeast of Scotland. And they filmed us for a few minutes and they left. They'll take care of it. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's what kind of, I mean, I know you said your biggest like struggle here is raising capital, right?
Oh, by far.
What is the capital feed that needs to go into something like this?
Well, I filled out paperwork this morning for a gentleman that wanted me to give him the documents based on 100 million. Now that's way more than we were looking for. We were looking for 18 million, but they said they didn't want to do anything less than 100 million. And they wanted us to have more money than we needed, so we don't run out of money. So I filled out a pile of paperwork for them. I don't know where that's going to go, but we're really putting together a package based on 18 million. It's a big boulder. See, a lot of people are out there looking for a guy that can generate small revenues first. The problem with us, or problem or good thing, good or bad, however it is, it's a great big boulder, and it takes a lot more energy to move that great big boulder. But as soon as it moves, the momentum is instantaneous. Okay. It's instantaneous. It jumps right up to an exit strategy automatically. And it just I mean, as far as that goes, it just moves quickly. And so it's a lot bigger. So really the minimum we need is about $6 million. And then the first revenues we'll generate will be in excess of 6 million. I've got a contract signed with Sincel Energy to bring us $12 million in sponsorship money. Sincel is a company that makes synthetic diesel fuel from trees, and they convert trees into synthetic diesel. They're in the middle of closing a larger transaction, and hopefully it closes pretty quick. But they want to be, by the time the race is, really fully operational, it'll be 3 years out, and that's about when they really need peak publicity. So it kind of, it matches for them, and they like the idea of I like to consider myself as an environmentalist, but a practical environmentalist. And what I mean by that is, well, these guys that fly around their private jets and tell everybody they need a smaller car because the world's getting hot. I look at that and it just makes me sick in my stomach. But I like to be looking at every which way possible to improve fuel economy, to make the world a better place. And if shipping burns 93 billion, I can't even comprehend 93 billion gallons of oil every year. That you can't get it back. Now there's a couple of ships that have been built with hydrogen, not too many. A couple of them built with natural gas, not too many. The first one that was built with natural gas blew up. That makes me feel, caught fire. Anyhow, it makes me feel really safe about, I'm going to ride on that one. Okay. But for the most part, I want to see better hydrodynamics. I want to see better things that would make the fuel industry, the fuel consumption of the shipping industry reduced. I mean, it's 6% of the entire energy on the planet. It's consumed by shipping, 6%. That doesn't sound like a lot till you look at the whole planet. And the actual propulsion system of most of the shipping industry really hasn't changed much since 1957, 64 years. That's older than me. Anyway, so it really hasn't changed a lot. So we like to see that, some good practical environmentalism done. And I like to be practical in what we're doing. And so it just makes sense if you could save a little bit of fuel here and there. But I guess the biggest issue is raising the capital, and not only just raising the capital, but also the just getting believed. People
Right.
believe it. When I got ready to cross, well, I set forward, I made 21 ocean voyages. And pretty much every single one of them, I had people telling me it could not be done. It's physically not possible. And I pull out my calculator and I start punching my numbers in, and they punched in whatever calculator they got from wherever they got. And it turned out every single time my calculator was right. Okay. It's not that my calculator is special. It's pretty much the same as anything else. It's a regular calculator, but I did the math based on the information I had. And they did the math based on the information they have. Okay. And so we spent a couple $1 million and a couple of years of my life doing research and development in hydrodynamic technology. And so, of course, my numbers are going to be different than theirs. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we did all the research for. And so consequently, it turned out in every case, my numbers were right. And so we ended up setting 4 world records in the process. And it's kind of, actually, when I got to Europe, I got a phone call back from this famous, I can't remember his name now, this famous, he runs a big cruise line. He contacted me in London and apologized because he wrote me a nasty letter before I took off about how I couldn't, it can't be done. No one's ever done it before. And he was just really nasty. Okay. And he called me up in London and, congratulated me and apologized. Nobody else did. None of the other ones did. In fact, the ones that were really nasty, they come back and say, "Oh, I was never nasty to you. I always believed you could do it." What? I remember you telling me the opposite end of the spectrum. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta love naysayers, right?
They're just like
people. Yeah. I mean, there's always people in the world that, I'm a grand design guy, think big guy. I want everybody to say I can't do it, because then I'll prove you wrong, right? That I'm the same way you are. You and I are cut from the same cloth when it comes to that, for sure. Because in my own company, a lot of people said that'll never work, and that'll never work. You'll never make money. Nobody else does it that way. Why would you do that? It's like, because I want to be different and I want to do things my own way. Right. And, here we are, like, even in my own company, here we are 6 years later and going strong as hell. Right. So it's like, everybody said, why would you do that? And my answer has always been this: I'm disrupting the market and I'm pissing everybody off.
I never intended to make anybody mad. I'm not trying to disrupt the market. I'm just trying to get, I see a huge marketplace of global sports, and it's all taken. But right off to the side, I see this channel that's completely empty. And I'm going, gee, nobody's doing this.
Yeah.
Let's move it right to my center path. And we're just going to follow this path because it makes all the sense in the world. To me, it's like Sam Walton, Walmart. Okay. He had these ideas on how to run a bunch of small stores and these are all originally a bunch of very small stores. And he was going to sell things almost at very small profit margin. And he took it to the company he worked with, the Butler Brothers, and the Butler Brothers told him he's nuts. You have to have this margin here, otherwise you're not going to do it. And no, you can do this with a very small margin. So he quit, started his own company. All right, his first store went bankrupt, belly up. So people that knew him, obviously Sam Walton doesn't know any better. He's not very smart. Well, he went back to it. He took the lessons he learned because he went belly up and applied them. And he copied more people here and there, gathered more information. And people said, you can't do this. He did it. Big time. Look at Walt Disney. He went bankrupt. Okay. And Art Linkletter said that he called, Walt Disney called him up and asked him to invest in Disney. And he said, it ain't going to happen. I'll believe it when I see it. Okay. So, guess what? It did happen. He had a dream. He saw a vision for where it can be. And their investors, I mean, the investors that invested in Sam Walton's company, 14,000 to 1. He had 98 people that invested $1,000. Okay, each one of them got back $14 million. Now, that's before you start counting the dividends and the additional growth after they went public.
Right.
When you include all of that, they made a lot more than 14,000 to 1. I mean, that's huge. I don't have any dreams of my investors making 14,000 to 1. You're wrong. I mean, but it's just huge. But, you mentioned NASCAR earlier. Bill France went around and asked everybody to invest in his company. Nobody would. Finally, he got a sponsor for $100,000 in 1949, I think it was. I have to go back and look at I did the math on this. That $100,000 is probably about $3 million in today's dollars. Okay, He got a sponsor, and that was the money necessary to create what we now know as NASCAR. And it's it's $100,000. It's worth $5 billion today, and so that's a 50,000 to 1 return. 50,000 to 1, and not 14,000, but 50. Now, when you do the math behind it to do the time, basically the time management of money, cost of the time on it, it comes out to about 1,500 to 1. Still a good return. 1,500 to 1, maybe. Basically, when you figure in all the inflation and everything else, that's a good return. 1,500 to 1.
It's a hell of a good
That's
return.
NASCAR. What is it?
Right.
Cars going round and round a track. Turn left. When you get done turning left, turn left again. When you get done, turn left.
Right. But it's big business. It's business.
The entertainment value of it.
It is.
That's what it is. And so, when the economy crashes, remember this: sports continue on because everybody wants to be entertained. And I never realized this till the last time that the market crashed back in 2008, 2009. You remember back when the real estate market just went.
Yeah. That was a pretty big deal for sure.
Everybody was hurting in so many different ways. Then when they gave A-Rod a pay raise in the middle of that, I'm going, what? Pay raise? You got a pay raise? I mean, how is it possible they give? I found out other ball players were getting pay raises. People couldn't find jobs, couldn't give away a house. I mean, it was bad. You remember how bad it was?
Oh, yeah, I remember quite well.
They gave these football players and baseball players a pay raise because people still want to be entertained. And the worse the economy is, the more people want to be entertained. Yeah. And that's what sports are. The entertainment. Right. And that's what we are, CupRoyale. We're in sports and entertainment opportunity. And so I don't know if the economy is going to crash again or not. If it does, I'm hoping to be fully operational and just keep plugging because the television and media rights is where the money's at, you know, and as far as that goes. And there's a lot more. You make money off of all kinds of paraphernalia, tickets. Sure. The tickets are not the big thing. Most people think the tickets are the big thing. It's not. There's so many other things that are more than ticket sales. That, I mean, of course, don't get me wrong, these stadiums, they want the ticket sales, no doubt about it. But all of that stuff, there's more to it than just the ticket sales. And so, anyways, I'm sorry, I get to rattling, you know, what are the questions you have?
Well, you're passionate about it, and that's a good thing, for sure. Well, so to kind of transition this whole thing and kind of wrap things up here, I always like to ask this question, and it's if you could have picked someone to be here, anybody dead or alive, mentor, friend, whatever the case may be, who would have you chose to be here?
I would pick the second king of Israel. Excuse me, the third king of Israel, Solomon. Okay. He was the first king to live in peace. His daddy, David, was basically a great warrior, but he was a wise man. Problem is, he didn't follow his own wisdom, but he was a very, very wise man, and he managed a lot of money, a lot of things. And the countries, if you take a minute and study that part of the world, this is right on the peak of the Arab Peninsula, and where it connects to Egypt. okay, of Africa. And the armies from Africa that would get mad at the Iraqi and the Syrian and the Iranian, okay, the Chaldeas, all of those others, they would go marching through Israel at each, right through the middle of Israel and go attack the other one. And then the other one would march right through the middle of Israel, go back and attack the other one. So when you march your armies through there, the armies got to eat, okay? They would just basically ransack Israel in the process. And basically, David and Solomon brought peace to that part of the world, and probably the only peace that's ever been there. But he was very wise in how he dealt with people and did so many things. Now, he screwed up in the fact that his son didn't follow what he taught his son because Solomon violated his own advice. But, he had like 1,000 wives. His own advice, which he gave his son, was get one wife and always be satisfied with her. But anyways, I have one wife. I've only been married once in my life, and she's beautiful, and I'm very grateful to have her. And so, but Solomon did so many wise things. I want wisdom. Like you get anything in my life, I would want wisdom. Knowing when to do the right thing, knowing when not to do something, knowing how to operate everything. And so I always want to borrow wisdom from as many people as I can, read as many stories, learn as much as I can. But I would say Solomon would be the guy.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, hey, how do people connect with you to support your cause, what you're doing, so on and so forth? How do people reach out to you? What's the best way?
Our website is www.CupRoyale.com. Very original. Okay. But CupRoyale.com. I'm Ralph, R-A-L-P-H, at CupRoyale.com. And my phone, which is actually on my website, okay, is 352-346-2365. 352-346-2365. Any other questions?
Awesome. No, I think what you're doing is pretty cool. It's before I got on here, I was on your website and I was like, man, this is pretty awesome. Can't wait to hear about it. And thanks for being on the show. I always say we got 168 hours a week. And there's a lot of other places you could have chose to been. But you chose to be here with us here in the War Room for at least this 40 minutes of your life. So appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Well, I'm extremely grateful that you took the time to talk with me.
Yeah.
And give me a chance to share my dream a little bit.
Yeah. It's a great dream. And, just keep after it. Like I always say, dream it, believe it, and go achieve it.
There you go. Dream it, believe it, and go achieve it. Sounds like
right. Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you for joining us on today's episode of War Room Moments. My name is Jason Miller. I'm your podcast host. And as I just said, go dream it, believe it, and achieve it. It's Jason Miller signing off.
Thanks for listening to War Room Moments with your host, Jason Miller. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we'll see you on the next episode.